So this is Stephanie Bachmann-Matei with the NVC Academy, and I would like to welcome you all for this interview. Today, I have the pleasure of being on the call with Marcy Axnes. Welcome, Marcy. How are you?
Oh, thank you for having me. I'm happy to be here.
I'm glad to be with you. So, Marcy, I understand you are, first of all, an early developmental specialist. You are an international speaker, and I'm glad we were able to catch you for this interview because I know you have been traveling quite a bit, mainly because you have recently published a book, and so you are invited all over the place to speak about it. So, and the title of your book is Parenting for Peace, Raising the Next Generation of Peacemakers.
Correct.
So, I'm very glad that you will be part of the parenting conference that I am putting together with the NVC Academy, which will happen in January. And your session will be on parenting for peace from scared to sacred. So would you be willing to just share a little bit about this fear of parents and how we can transform that into sacredness?
Absolutely. You know, it seems kind of epidemic out there. There's this anxiety that sort of thrums underneath the experience of parenting. And I've really been looking at this, and I've boiled it down to what I call the big three. Too much information, too many choices, and too little confidence. And when we sort of come at it from, first of all, understanding there's a reason why we're all feeling so kind of overwhelmed and stressed and, you know, trying to be super mom or super dad or whatever it is, I think it's very helpful for us to, first of all, see that there are some real solid reasons why we're feeling this. So we don't feel, you know, crazy or alone or, you know, less than. And so really I've been coming at this parenting for peace idea lately from this big three, and how can we harness some tools to cultivate mastery within ourselves so that we are not run by these fears, that we understand them and we have ways to really begin to work with them.
Yeah.
And I just want to say a quick word about the book.
Yes.
Parenting for Peace. Sometimes people, I just want to make it clear what the idea of the book is. It's not just, you know, so we can have more peace and quiet today in the home.
Oh.
That's part of it. That's a lovely benefit. But really the idea of the book is if we are really going to change the world, we need to raise a generation of people who are hardwired for the qualities of the peacemaker, hardwired at the level of neural development of our brains, especially our social brain, for the kind of peacemaker capacities that we're going to need in our next generation of citizens. Things like self-regulation, empathy, trust, imagination, intellectual and emotional flexibility. And these qualities, these neurologically developing capacities, these begin wiring up in the womb.
Mm-hmm.
And so parenting for peace begins far earlier than most of us would think. And the lovely win-win here is that a child whose brain wires up in this way is a delight to parent, is a joy to the family. And then when they grow up, out they go into the world as another peacemaker, an innovator, somebody who can take this world in its challenged state and give us a hope of surviving and thriving.
Thank you, Marcy. Really enjoy hearing that. So, what would you say in your session would be the number one thing that you hope to contribute to parents?
Well, I often say when I give a talk, you know, if there's one thing you remember from today, this is it, because it informs every moment of your life. And it's what I call the mainspring of my book. My book is based on 7 principles and 7 steps, but the mainspring that drives all of them is the following. It's really a biological tenet that's always working in your life. Here it is. At every moment and at every level, we are always either in growth mode or protection mode. Starting right at the level of our cells, we are constantly surveying the environment and deciding whether conditions are safe and secure so that we can grow into our fullest potential and express everything that we can, or our conditions threatening, either overtly threatening or even just vaguely threatening, so that we have to instead devote our energies to defending ourselves and protection. And that limits the development of the social brain. So that the implications there for a child or a baby whose brain is just wiring up and growing are vast. And so here's the tool that we'll be talking about a lot, and we'll be talking a lot about practical ways to deploy this tool. The tool is a question. I'm very big into questions.
Yes.
The wonderful Buddhist monk Thich Nhat Hanh, he says the vitality is in the question.
Right.
So here's the question. Is this communication, is this action that I'm about to take or have with my child going to foster growth mode or protection mode, either in my child and in myself?
So it sounds like, Marcy, for you, really the core of parenting has a lot to do with self-awareness. Would you agree with that?
Oh, absolutely. Okay. I mean, if there's one massive finding that's come out of this fairly new field of interpersonal neurobiology, yes, attachment neurobiology, it is that the single biggest investment you can make in your child's well-being is to cultivate your own inner life. Specifically, out of the attachment research, we know that the more you can become fluent and friendly with your own childhood history, the more that serves your child's well-being. And it's a little counterintuitive, and we will explain exactly how that works, and it's kind of almost like science fiction, because our children, we have these mind melds going on with our children, and they actually are downloading our social brain circuitry. It's kind of crazy, and we'll get into that in the program.
Yeah. And as you know, Dr. Daniel Siegel is the keynote speaker, and that's exactly what he will address. So
that's right. Yes, of course.
So I love how, from different perspectives, we are all coming back to the same core aspects of
and so I boil it down to this mantra: work on yourself and your child will thrive.
All right, I like that. Okay.
I have a lot of Dan Siegel in my book. I quote him a lot, and in fact I was sort of delighted and honored that on Amazon they've paired us up, our books. They for a special rate you can buy these two books together. Who bought this book also bought these books, and I'm right there with Dr. Siegel.
Yes. So in your book, you also quote NVC. So how do you see, and this is really will be, my last question, but so how do you see NVC, so nonviolent communication, supporting this awareness? And, go ahead.
Well, NVC, as I see it, is really at its core about self-awareness, understanding what our feelings are first, what our needs are, and then being able to articulate and be clear about what I want to request based on that, how I'm going to communicate with you based on that. The only way that we can have that kind of self-awareness is when we're feeling in growth mode. If we're feeling even vaguely threatened, those connections to really that self-reflective capacity are interrupted. We're geared for survival. And hey, this is to be respected. We should never, I don't ever want to suggest to a parent that they ever sort of, beat themselves up for being in protection mode. This is how we're wired. If we weren't wired this way, you and I wouldn't be here today.
Exactly, yeah.
Species would have died out. So, but so really this is all Parenting for Peace is about. How do we cultivate that atmosphere of growth mode for ourselves, for our children, so that we can have that presence. Presence is the number one principle of the 7 principles in Parenting for Peace. And it's only in that place of presence, being right here, right now, with my body, my mind, my feelings. It's only there that we can tap into that self-awareness and utilize these wonderful tools of NVC.
And I appreciate how you mentioned, the fact about beating ourselves up. And in my experience, NVC and the tools that it offers in terms of, self-understanding and self-connection also adds to what you have not specifically mentioned, but I'm imagining that's where you're heading. It's the self-compassion piece. So really
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I make it very clear. It's easy to read some of the research in my book, and especially if you've already raised a child, and start to be filled with, God forbid, guilt. This is not about guilt. This is not about blame. It is about understanding how we become who we become. We were all babies too. We all have experienced our own stories, however they were. And as Dr. Siegel is very, very passionate about pointing out, it doesn't matter if your childhood history is a happy one, a sad one, a miserable one, a glorious one. That's not the point. The point is understanding it and making sense of it. And the other point I really like to leave parents with in a strong way, and this is also supported in the research, it isn't about perfection. It's about striving.
Well, thank you, Marcy. I could go on and on.
Well, luckily we'll get to go on a little bit more.
Absolutely. Yes, we will hear more from you and learn more from you. And yes.
And I intend to learn from you and your other speakers, and of course, Dr. Siegel. I'm so honored to even just be on the same slate with him.
Yeah, it's a special treat to have him part of this. Yes. So I appreciate your time and your willingness to be here today.
Yes,
and I'm looking forward to our conference and your session. And I particularly enjoy the fact that yours is actually kind of the last session. So I imagine it as bringing some closure to the whole conference. And I understand.
Well, I've ended up sort of with the specialty of closing out conferences. I did it at Parenting. I've done it at Trust Birth. I've done it at all these conferences because it is kind of my book and my approach is a bit of an umbrella meta piece that pulls it all together. Yeah. So I'm happy to do that for you.
Yeah. Thank you, Marcy.